All right. I think we're live. It says so on my Zoom meeting. I always have to check for the YouTube to see it. But I'm Jack Allen. Welcome to another episode, Conspiracy or Just a Coincidence. If you haven't followed me, please go follow me on Twitter at Conspiracy or JAC. I'm going to post the link here on my Twitter. Who knows? We'll get lucky and see who drops in the chat. Join the stream. Modern education system. All right. So today's episode, I did the book on the modern education. Oh, let me hit record. All right. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode, Conspiracy or Just a Coincidence. I am Jack Allen. As I already said on the YouTube, but follow me on Twitter. If you're not, I got a website, conspiracyorjustacoincidence.com. I just got to if you want to support the show financially, you can. I always say this though, anything, I'm more than grateful and honored that you would there's so many people that do awesome content. But if you can't support the show, if you could leave a review, I just got a real nice one the other day. And it sends me an email every Monday when I get a review. So I love those just as much if you want to support the show. I do this because I love to read, and I hope you guys I learn something new. Every book, every podcast I do, I learn something new. Sorry, my cat's making weird noises. He does that when he's bored, but I love doing this stuff. And so it makes me so happy when you enjoy it too. So today's episode is about the modern education system. And it's this book by John Taylor Gatto, and John, R.I.P. He passed away, I think 5 or 10 years ago, but awesome. He has a few books and super smart guy. He was a teacher, but I feel like every time it's so synchronistic when I do an episode, it's something that's happening in the news, or maybe I'm biased, but it seems synchronistic. And I see so many videos like Libs of TikTok and other things of kids in public, and I'm sure private school, but public school, and the teachers are literally just indoctrinating. They're insane. They are literally crazy. And they're teaching our kids, our next generation, the most important people for a society to have is the next generation. And these teachers let their biases come through and are I see crazy videos of degeneracy, of sick things, kids learning about sexual proclivities and things like that, just mind-blowing stuff. And I think I went to public school, and I never remember a teacher being politically active with me. I didn't even know what a Republican versus a Democrat was. I didn't know where they stood on the political line. I didn't know who they voted for president. And we had obviously, a few elections during my years of growing up, and no teachers said who they were voting for. And now that is totally out the window. So you have a whole generation of kids, as you guys know, being indoctrinated with whatever the beliefs are of that teacher. And you respect teachers. You're taught to respect that. And we're going to get into that in a second. And they're certified, they're qualified, and you trust them, right? So you're going to believe what they indoctrinate on, and they're adults, so they know how to. I saw one video of this person that Donald Trump supporters brings out the racist in people, right? The way they, you as a young child, you respect your elders, all those things. And also, my mom was a public school teacher, and she is the most amazing lady in the world. She worked in a relatively poor area in coal region, northern Pennsylvania, where globalism stole everything that they had, and they live a pretty, as a degenerate term would be a hick place, right? And she would take kids, a few of the less fortunate kids, shopping each year to the mall and buy them winter jackets. She would buy all of her class toothbrushes because there was 2 kids that didn't have toothbrushes, and she'd felt bad just by giving them toothbrushes, right? My mom was an amazing teacher. And so this podcast, though I'm going to be hitting teachers hard, is not a dig at all teachers. That's such a stupid generalization. Most of your teachers, they want to do a good thing. They're taught how to teach you and so on. They are honest, good, people. And it's just kind of like with police, a few can spoil the bunch. But I just wanted to preface that because sometimes my parents listen to my shows, and this is no way all public education, right? My pop-up was an educator. A lot of my family is teachers. But so these are the 7 lessons that, oh, I forgot to check the chat. Oh, hey, what's going on? All right. So yeah, so let me pull my notes again. All right. So these are 7 lessons that every school teacher, not wow, I'm already doing, I'm saying every school teacher, that the education system was created, these 7 things to instill in our children, right? Confusion. Everything's out of context. Math, history, there's no connection to the next. School days follow like complete chaos. Both parents work, so class position. Students stay where they belong, they're numbered. You make the kids, the current education system, and if I slip up and say teachers, again, I don't mean all teachers. You make kids enjoy being locked in a class with other kids that also share numbers. You start to have contempt for like dumb kids or kids that are irresponsible. You know your place, and it is the logic they use is that an employer only hires you if you get good grades, and which is not true at all, right? Very rarely do companies ask what grades you got, but that's what you teach your children, so they'll focus in class. And that's not inherently a bad thing at all, obviously. Indifference. You teach kids to care, but to not show that they care too much. You teach them to jump up and down in their seats, competing for the teacher's favor, and you kind of like Pavlov dog them with bells to stop what they are doing and go, because the whole thing is now not important, right? We're switching topics, which again doesn't make any sense. Like, I learned more in the past 2 years that I've read books than I ever did in school, dude. I could not tell you. I had history classes, I had honors history classes, and I would memorize whatever we were studying, regurgitate it on a test. And maybe that was just me, but I did not feel like if you asked, like, I'm always so impressed with some people that like do debates and things like that at their knowledge of history. And I wonder, like, is it just because they read recently? Because I can't imagine, and maybe their school, they learned that better than I did, but like, I could not connect time periods together. And I feel like I did well in school. Like, it's not because you're not smart. I think it's taught in this way that we'll keep going. It's just taught. Kids don't come out with any actual like knowledge that they usually. You teach kids, oh yeah, emotional dependency. Stars, red checks, smiles, prizes, honors, surrender their will to the chain of command. Now, how do we see that today, right? Rights can be granted or withheld. They don't exist inside a school. And this is just all things that you will carry over as for 12 years, you are inside this place that rights can be taken away from you that you have had for maybe the poor acting of someone in the class. It's training you to be a good societal member, or, a one that will abide the government. Any dissent is quashed by disciplinary confrontation. Children have to sneak away for a bathroom break or on the pretext of a water break or bathroom break. And the teacher only allows you to deceive them because the conditions, these kids depend on the teacher's favor. And again, we see, like, it's just, you're instilling these in values, or not values, but behaviors that are going to continue as they get older. Intellectual dependency. This is so big. This is what we have so many people in the world are at. Good students wait for the teacher to tell them what to do. We must wait for people better trained than ourselves to tell us how to make meaning in our lives. And this is how you see this happening today with like the science world. We wait for the science to tell us what to do. Very few people that are there like on social media pushing this stuff can do science. They just read or reiterate, regurgitate what someone that has a blue check mark or is certified, and they just regurgitate what they told them to say. The successful students are the ones that do the thinking that the teacher assigns with minimum resistance and feign enthusiasm, which is so true. I was like a a suck up in school. You're taught to act like you're really excited, to act like you, and just to get this person's support or kindness. Provisional self-esteem. Our world would not survive if a flood of confident people existed. Instead, you make people dependent on experts. And you do this with a monthly report to know if parents should be dissatisfied with their child, compels children to make decisions about themselves based on the judgment of strangers. No trust in the parents, as opposed you rely on the evaluation of a certified official of the state, which anything with the state we know is never a good thing, right? And last one that he has, under constant surveillance, homework to maintain surveillance at home. The way the school is ran, it's by childless children, is written by like people that have no children. All these, it's just disgusting. So these 7 rules he gave as a teacher, like as not like a joke, but you understand. So all those things I felt were true though. Like the modern education system just creates the kind of society that they can govern easily. There is no like this, like I said, again, I've learned more in 2 years that I have with reading and doing these shows than I ever did in school. Like, what was school preparing me for? And they always like say that, like, oh, homeschooling kids are weird. And we don't have children yet. And I know that's probably not a possibility, but you see what the kids are being taught today. Like it's ironic. So a few lifetimes ago, this was not how it was in the United States. Originality and variety were what made this country so great, right? The freedom from regimentation is what made US the miracle of the world. We were unheard of. Social class, boundaries, easy to cross. Our citizens were confident, inventive, and Americans, without the government sticking its nose in every aspect of our life, without social agencies and institutions telling you how to think, feel, and live, it was what made America this amazing dream of a place, right? Like people without the worry of a strict state, they were able to invent and adapt and change and find the best method of doing something, because you didn't have the state forcing on you with their boot on your neck, forcing you to live a certain way. And after the Civil War, this all changed. Abe Lincoln, one of my least favorite presidents, the tyrant that he was, you're not taught that in school either. You're taught he's an amazing man. But so mandatory schooling and government monopoly on schooling finally happened. I think it was like 1870 that they passed the Public Instruction Act, and that's what mandated school. But before that, we had school. It was just as much as every individual wanted. So I'm sure people couldn't read or write, right? They couldn't do math. Wrong. The literacy rate at the time of the American Revolution was literally like 99%. And obviously this is with not slaves and things like indentured servitudes. I don't know what that noun is. Thomas Paine, Common Sense. Thomas Paine was also in France during the Revolution. I'm pretty sure he was a Freemason, but Common Sense sold 600,000 copies to a population of 3 million, 20% being slaves and 50% of that population being indentured servants. So literally 600,000 copies were sold to like 1 million people. That's insane. What book has sold to, let alone 25%, let alone like 80% of the population? Is that not insane? 600,000 copies to such a small number of people. So clearly people are able to read, because I never read Common Sense. Definitely should put it on the list. But so were the colonists just all geniuses? No, the truth is reading, writing, and arithmetic only take about 100 hours to master if your audience is eager and willing to learn. So you move fast, like, a kid's 12 years old. He watches his dad, who runs I'm talking like colonial times. He watches dad run a soup business, and he wants to be able to read what people are writing, what their orders are. And that's when you would teach the kid. And that is why the illiteracy rate was close to 100% prior to mandatory schooling. So right there, that alone like knocks out any like assumption that without school we would be lost, because it's the total opposite, right? Go pick up a 5th grade math book from the 1850, and that book is literally college age math for many horrible education states. Not the Northeast is like relatively great compared to Florida or the South, but yeah. So they were so far ahead, and I feel like you see what school is doing now. They're like they want to get rid of grades and to make it more equitable. All these things, like, we are not improving our child's minds and intellect and creativity. We're telling them that there is no right way. The answers are always gray. It's insane. Like the schooling system today. My fiance went to a private school. If we have to go this route of, I know we will. She'll buck me on that, but they'll go to private school, because no way in hell can you send you don't know, you have no trust who you're getting. You'll get a loony bin teaching your kid and could screw that kid up forever for what you tried to create as a parent. Mandatory schooling has destroyed the communities by relegating the training of children to certified state experts. School is like essentially a social engineering project. So you solidify yourself, your block of the pyramid, and you can see, since the 1870s, schooling has literally changed every aspect of American life. Colonial days, like I said, we had no schools to speak of, but like neighborhood things at times. I had a picture, but it's just it was just it's like a tiny little log house with one window, and kids would go there and there was a teacher, probably just to learn to read or something like that. But Ben Franklin's quote, he had no time. I think it seems people want to be subjugated and told what to do. We lost the republic to go back to an elite leech class. Damn, I don't know. But Ben Franklin, he had no time to waste in school. I don't know where I pulled that quote from. So how do these schools come about? Important question, right? How did they start? How did the schools get to who thought of the idea? So modern schooling came as a byproduct of Red Scares in 1848 and 1919. So if you listen to my Rockefeller episodes, you should go listen to it. A lot of things that we take for normal today were created by the power elites, the new corporate capitalists, to change and create society in a way that they deem fit and beneficial for them. Okay, like college was built there were some state universities, but the private institutions got all this funding from Rockefeller and from Carnegie and from others like that. And they did that not because they wanted to educate the public. No, they had factories to run. So the elite, this upper class that went to private school, would go to their school. So now they have a manager that can oversee the dumb people, the hard hands doing the work. So that's why the college was created. So modern schooling came about as the sense of the Red Scare. So powerful people are fearing that there's a revolution among our industrial poor. And again, reference Rockefeller episode, healthcare, for example, was a creation by Rockefeller and other guys like that, because they were worried that their workers, they were having violent strikes and they would shut down everything. People would die. And these fat cats are getting scared. So they say, all right, we'll give you this, like, here, take this. See that we care about you, to make sure that they would at least stay calm, because it's easier to stay calm when you're being fed and you can afford some things that you enjoy and help you relax. American families were so appalled by the native cultures of the immigrants in the 1840s, they feared it, right? So these top people, all these immigrants are coming to America, and they are scared by probably the closeness and how they probably didn't follow the same customs that these top people have. So they needed a way to control these next generations. okay? Because they're having factories now. They're starting, the industrial revolution is starting to ramp up in America. So they need to be able to train workers that are going to just listen to the rules, that are going to do their job, and then not cause you any issues. So they created school. It was to keep the lower class controllable and dependent. You indoctrinate those 7 lessons that I told you about, how you stay in line, you're a number, you raise your hand to use the bathroom, you wait for a bell to get up. This is how you do it. For 12 years, you force children to go to a state-run facility and be indoctrinated. In the 1920s, things changed a little bit with the growth of population. So now we're, World War One, the population is really growing in the 1920s. Like any industry, they realized, oh, wow, we have more people. I wonder if we can like make profit on this thing that we're mandating. What else, other things do they mandate that they make money on? So instead of the poor class, we can indoctrinate the middle class as well. Let's lump them in there. So think of children now, like they cannot concentrate for long. They're on TikTok with minute-long videos. They can't watch anything. They can't sit down and read. They can't, all they're used to is instant and moving quickly. There's no concentration. Facebook and all these video games, they rely on, psychology or whatever to try to keep you just playing that extra minute. I mean, these kids, like it's brutal. It's brutal. It's so sad. They make them hate solitude, addicted to distraction. School has become a replacement for church, and hence why so many are worshiping science and experts. That connection, I think, is pretty obvious. And I wrote this note, and I knew like it would get me in trouble or get some people angry. But schooling, though, is essentially like a communistic idea, right? There is no free market in schooling, really. And prior to the Civil War, though, there was. You could pick and choose if it provided value or it didn't, which education suits them. And we don't have that now, right? You better go, or the literal police will come for you. Now, 50 years ago, children could still learn life lessons. So this is like my thought, well, why did it just get so bad now, right? Like we had awesome cultures in the 50s and the 60s until the 70s, but, still people, not much real difference. They could hold a conversation, all these kind of things, okay? So why was it different 50 years ago? Because mandatory schooling has been required since the 1880s, we'll say. Well, because back then you had family time. So you had a single mother staying at home, or not a single mother, a mom that stays at home, did not work, that raises the children. When they come home from school, the father comes home. Hopefully he can spend time with the kids, but they are getting instruction and ideas from their parents at home. Well, now television and social media raise our youth, and that's so evident. But like my dad used to say how they had 3 TV channels, and he had to get up to turn the TV, and he would fight with his sisters watching Superman or whatever. But once it was over, that's all they had, the radio. But there was one TV in a house. The family gathered around the television. It's just not like that today. Kids are in their room on their iPads. The parent is exhausted from working, both of them working, cooking, cleaning, picking kids up, driving them to school. They get home, they need to relax, and they just want their kids to be quiet. And so they're on social media. They're having manipulative people raising them, putting ideas in their head. And that's why that's how it has gotten to where it is today. School, they teach you to obey orders. And the schools didn't, or the states did not, just like many things around this time after the Civil War, is really when American tyranny on its own people ramped up. So the invention of compulsory schooling, I said, started around in Massachusetts around 1850. It was resisted with guns by 80% of the population. We were just such tough people back then. Man, we were badass. But one last community was holding out in Cape Cod, and it did not surrender its kids until 1880. It was seized by the militia, and children were marched to school under guard. Isn't that crazy? Like, it's not like these people in America were idiots in 1880. So why would they defend this right for them to not force their kids? Probably because they didn't see the benefit. Their kid could read and write. They saw people in the community that did different trades. They found something interesting. They'd asked to apprentice with this person, and they enjoyed what they did. They were working with their hands, or wherever they did, wherever they worked. And as I said before, literacy rates 98% prior to compulsory schooling. In 1990, literacy rates were around 91%. And even crazier, most children schooled at home are around 5 to 10 years ahead of their formally trained peers. And obviously there's exceptions to every rule, but I think honestly, like I was like thinking about it, it's almost like not a psyop, but like they want you to be scared to not send your kids to public school. So what they do is they say, oh, homeschool kids turn out weird. Usually they're Christian, right? One of my good friends, his wife was homeschooled until I think high school, and she's not weird, right? Like they're both very Christian, but not weird. But that's they want you to think homeschooling, Christianity, family values are weird, and they're very successful. Schools were designed by a guy named Horace Mann, and Horace, like any good elite stooge, he was tasked with produced a formulaic human beings who could be predicted and controlled. And we have created, me included, a populace that like is useless, right? Like none of our population has learned anything that benefits humanity, that creates things that you use every day. There are people, and I have so much respect for them, that do things with their hands. Like my job, I enjoy it. But I am pretty much like reliant on other people to survive. I don't grow my own food. I don't, food. I couldn't build a house. I couldn't do so many things that people back then were taught how to do. So like, what has school really taught us? Is it, like I said, again, they don't just teach you to read and write. There's all these other things. But what did you really learn while you were in school for 12 years? What could you have learned? And is it good for like our brain and mind to not be taught how to create things, how to build things, how to be sustained, like to sustain if I wanted to be a farmer and live off the land, could I, is that a better life than sitting in a cubicle for 8 hours, 40 hours a week? And I don't have an answer on that. I have a guess. So we compel children to do the same thing, to sit in confinement with the same people of the same exact age, class, and we teach them to like, we're a land that admires talkers. We don't admire mathematicians. We don't admire, great historians or great philosophers or great minds. We admire rappers and people that can shoot a ball and people that can throw a ball faster. That's what America values. It's just disgusting that instead of adding people that add true value to our lives, we add these almost like fictitious characters that are ridiculous. And I connect this because school, you have your kid in school for all this time. They come home, television and social media control the lives, which promotes more degeneracy and all these other things. So in the past, before school, a child's life was full of work, real work, charity, searching for mentors to teach them what they wanted to learn. For example, and now they obviously don't do that. This is an awesome statistic right here too. So there's 168 hours in each week. Children sleep around for 56 hours. That leaves them 112 hours to have a week. Children on average spend 55 hours, and this book kind of old, so probably more, on TV, iPad, social media. 55 hours out of a week of 168. It's like a third. What is that? Yeah, a third of the week is spent useless, not doing anything, being indoctrinated, raising them. 57 hours a week so after that, you have 57 hours a week to grow up. Well, you attend school for 30 of those hours. 8 hours of commute, 7 hours of doing, create a unique consciousness for themselves out of time that is not being, you know, social media shoved down their throats, forcing them to go to school, forcing them to do whatever, 9 hours to just create a unique person that's not a robot like everybody else, 9 hours a week. So they have little time to find their passion. And, you know, we always hear this, like my grandfather, 18, was over when they were storming the beaches in France. He was on a boat fighting a war at 18. What was I doing at 18? I was smoking weed, barely responsible for, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't probably do laundry. I couldn't do anything. And people always say, like, boomers, you know, I love my parents, boomers, but they're, you know, boomers, not my parents, but other people will say, oh, when I was your age, I was doing this. And I hate to say this, they're right. They're right. Because back then as a child, you spent more time around these adults, maybe with your parents, etc., learning life. But now we are told, we watch, we sit, and that's all kids do. They never find anything out for themselves. And so I told kind of about poor sense of future kids today, like they can't really see the future. I could not as well. I was, you know, drugs probably clouded my mind, but no sense of repercussions for my actions. Ahistorical, and that was like me as well. I literally didn't give a crap about history. I knew nothing of history. I knew what events were. I had no sense of when that happened in the time zone. Maybe you guys did too, if that relates to you. But yeah, I just talked about them. Never mind. All right, I just didn't know how historical events were related until like now. So contempt for weakness, that's something else. I mean, that's like debatable. I felt like when John Taylor Gatto mentioned that, and it's not that I think that you should have you know, I don't think you should pick on weak people, but there is like a social pecking order, and it's not more contempt more than that's just the way humans are. But it teaches kids also to have intimacy issues because they have to act like a certain way at school out of fear of being made fun of by their peers. And this teaches kids to like have this hard outer shell that no one can really come in because you're worried that you'll be made fun of. And my fiance, she's about 7 years younger than me, and school was brutal for her. She said, like, social media was brutal. Kids were so mean to each other. And social media, I'm graduated high school 2009. So social media, you know, there was Facebook and stuff, but it was relatively new, you know, like it was relative. It wasn't like it was today. And now, like, kids, I mean, I don't know when they can be themselves because they're going to get picked on if they post something silly. They're going, no matter what they post, probably they can't do it at school because they're going to bully them there. It's like a really tough things that these kids have to go through. Oh, hey, Flat Earth Boxer. And hey, Carl. Visiting. All right, sorry. So back to mandatory schooling. All right. Weakness, behaviors, and all the behaviors are picked up from people on TV, social media, YouTubers, all that kind of stuff. Is that good? Absolutely not. Because where do they get their behavior from? Well, they either are also degenerates or things like the Tavistock Institute create the persona or the way they want people to act. Kids are also like ingrained with materialism. Adults are too, though. And I don't know if school does that, but I just try to put the notes at I do my best to outline the book. So what can be done, right? Well, I can tell you what won't work. Pouring tons of money into schooling hasn't worked yet. And maybe back into instead of taking that schooling, who was it? Was it DeSantis or Trump? And not that all politicians say good things, but they said instead of your school, your property taxes or whatever going to the school, that same money should go to whoever should go with the child. So wherever the child goes. And that would be the best thing that could happen to education since mandatory schooling, that you could pick and choose where your kid went, who you trusted with your child's future, technically. But that's one thing that could be fixed. And for the past 160 years, maybe more, this nation has relied on this brainwashing of listening to experts. It's imposed objectives downward. So from a lofty like command center of experts, thinking of like Strange Love sitting around that room, and they pass down what they want you to act, how to be, how to think, and to put policies and rules in place. And it has never worked. It will never work because all these people that pass these rules, they are so far removed from actual reality. It's ridiculous. Like, think of Nancy Pelosi. She's worth like $180 million that we know about. And she is an elected representative to represent the people. What? She's worth $180 million. How could she represent the people? She has no idea what regular life is like. And it's not just her. It's on both sides of the aisle. But that's the people that pass down what your kids are going to learn and things like that. Or it's, lobbying groups that are funded by elites or billion-dollar corporations or groups that pass down legislation that never represents the best for people. Self-knowledge is the truest form of knowledge. And I totally agree with that. Like I said, I've been reading for like 3 years and I have learned so much. I feel like I could hold my own talking to like a historical person who went to college for history. I could hold my own, right? But children they're rarely allowed these unguided settings and learnings to solve a problem. But in school, they're forced this stuff and they just memorize it for a test. So that's something that like these children before mandatory schooling, they would be able to navigate troubling situations and learn from those experiences. And kids have none of these experiences at all. You gotta have to get them interested in the community, solving real world issues. And this is how you create a generation of great thinkers and problem solvers, because they solve the issue of whatever problem some of them would solve a better equipment to farm or whatever it has, inventions. And that's why America was this unstoppable force, because we had this group of just inventive, creative, unique people that could solve issues that we did things the same way for 300 years, and now we created a new way. Do we have that here? What inventive people do we have in the last 20 years, 30 years? So people would say Steve Jobs or Elon Musk. I guess. Have they done anything to make my life better? What have they created? It's just like going more towards this AI field. And I know like it's such a different time to compare these two, but I just don't see, if you're watching my cat, he can make that jump from that chair to that. He almost knocks down my light. But yeah, so I would never say America is a country of great thinkers anymore. I'm sure most people would probably agree with that. Why? I would blame mandatory schooling and social media. And make no mistake, like schooling is created because they need to break away your kids from you. And this was the goal of the schools in the 1650s by the Bay Colony, another corporation running schools, and Horace Mann in 1850. And that is how you create the next generation. I'm sorry, 1 second. My cat's scratching a wall. But yeah, so that's how you create the next generation. I think it was Stalin or somebody said that. Give me the kids for 5 years and I will raise the next socialist or communist. I'm butchering that quote. But the elite saw the power in having these kids locked away from their parents for 8 hours a day, and they knew the benefit of it. You can instill dogma, you can instill ideas in the kids, and I kind of already touched on that, and you guys know that as well as anybody. And also, they're the experts for schooling, which is just getting demolished in America. Their solutions always, I weirdly enough, they always cost more money. Huh. Now, why is that? Why is that? That's how you repair something that was never broken in the beginning, but to repair it now because kids are getting dumber, is it's always going to cost more money. Hmm. Sounds like it's a little self-serving and hoping to centralize this education system even more, right? And we'll get into it's they want to break the kids away from whatever family values your family may have, break it away from them, and they're very successful. They're very think of how, I mean, again, I'm speaking of like my evidence, but I hope you guys can relate to this. But like, I went to a public school. We were, my parents went to church with me every weekend. I went to Sunday school, and I stopped believing Christianity because in middle school I'm learning science and Darwin's theory of evolution and all these things, how we, fish. So I couldn't put together, well, if God created man and women, how does evolution work? Like, how can I put these two together? And that's the goal. That's the goal. And then you create strife in family, et cetera, et cetera. So we need less school, not more school. Schools create a lot of the modern agony of life. Like I said, compulsory schooling is a recent phenomenon. And 50 years ago, you would escape it with home and family life TV. But social media, TV, they will blot up any individualistic thinkings. TV become a commercial mind control, blocking all escape routes or mass schooling. All of our listeners would definitely agree with that. And schooling has removed us from the communities of your town or wherever you live. And you move into now like this uncaring network where prior to that, everyone in town knew each other. Their goal was to make their town better. We all shared the same goal, nationalistic, city, state. You were proud, you wanted to make your place better, and you were going to do what it took to make it better. And now we're putting these uncaring networks. Like you guys probably, I played sports, camaraderie. I can't remember very few kids' names that were on those teams, that camaraderie that was shared. But have you ever forgotten your family members? And this is how it used to be in their communities. Like that was John down the street. He does this, so and so. And schooling has taken this time in our ability to form the families, the next families, and the next communities. And networks, these like fake networks, they make people lonely as well because who can they turn to? And then now, they're not with their family. They have this hard outer shell because they're going to be picked on, etc. And institutional leaders have now been inserted to become your synthetic family. Who do you trust? I trust Anthony Fauci with the blue check mark. I don't trust that my dad's tips or advice, but I trust this random celebrity on the internet. And I know that's like a thing of kids rebelling, but they are inserting these experts to take over the family or the state. They want to create, and literally, they want to create you dependent on daddy government, right? They want the state to be your dad, to be the one who loves you and cares for you and gives you your money for food. And just, you need to listen to dad, government dad. They want unquestionable loyalty. Many like how they educate you to be in school. And even like JFK, and I know a lot of people in the truther world love JFK, which I don't know why. I mean, I don't think I refuse to believe there was any good president since my boy Andrew Jackson, but not the whole quote, not what the country can do for you, what for you can do for your country. And it's even then, like that's a harmless statement in itself. And I agree with it because I believe in nationalism, but it's like inserting, it should be, what you can do for your community, your family, these people that care about you, as opposed to the state. And it just kind of reiterates like you are a possession of the state. You're not your family, not your community, of the government. And that's like, I didn't really agree with that kind of thought process in this book. Cause like I said, I think it's important that we can all be connected under the one goal of making America the best place it can be, the most successful, the place where people are envious of. And that's something that could unite this country. But they teach you that that's bad and that's supremacy. But anyway, okay. Children in school are valued on performance based on meaningless, fantastic behavior that dehumanizes children. And I kind of talk, sucking up to teachers leads to sucking up to bosses, basically sucking up to blue check marks. Like all this stuff is indoctrinated in school year after year, generation after generation, and more. I'd be interested if anyone like can message me or whatever. Like, do kids in school, their teachers are obviously probably going to teach them what like the blue check marks do. And I'd love to know, like, do they say trust the experts and their same thoughts on science, how science, you don't question science. And I'd be really interested to see what the majority of kids believe in that kind of area. So the U.S. has become an institution, a nation of institutions, as opposed to a nation of communities. Cities used to have communities like Polish Hill and Pittsburgh, and all these, they're technically, I guess, like hereditary, like enclaves of certain people from Europe. And that's not necessarily a good thing, but people in that community all knew each other. They wanted the best for that community. We have none of that now. You've seen 90% of the US population lives in 50 cities. They literally act indifferent to their own human interests. Half of the citizens that are registered to vote, half of them barely vote. And I'm not like a big proponent of voting. I don't think if it mattered, they wouldn't let you do it. But this is all due to the alienation of community life. People leave trash where they live. Why? Because they don't care. It's their community, but they don't care. This was not how it was, especially in the Black community in the pre-LBJ. It was all Black people, and probably they had less money than the white communities. But it didn't look like it did today. I don't know how many of you guys have been in horrible areas in the inner cities. They're horrible. There's garbage, there's drugs, crime, all that stuff. This was not how it was 80 years ago, because you were, that might be too long, like 70 years ago, because you went to school, you went home to your parents, you hung out with the community, you were raised by your community, by that guy, your friend's mom down the street, and now you're raised by social media and mandatory schooling ran by people that are pretty much brainwashed as well. So mandatory schooling is created to regulate and make uniform. They redirect the focus from families to communities to institutions, and we anoint like the machine as our king. A century ago, a French sociologist wrote that every institution, this is huge about mandatory schooling as well, the unstated first goal is to survive and grow. And that makes sense, right? Any institution wants to get bigger because bigger, more money, more power, more prestige. And not to undertake that mission is just forget. Okay. So, but what basically every institution wants to grow, but they'll say that their first line, what their goal is, but that's not their goal, right? So like, for example, the Postal Service you would think its goal is to deliver the mail, right? And that is a goal, but its main goal is to protect its employees and have a modest status ladder. That's not the first, like they're not, I know the post people, man, they sleep in like the parking lot across the street from my house. And, it's not, their goal isn't delivered. It's to have an employable job that they could rise the ranks. The permanent military it's like underlying goal isn't to defend national security, but to secure a fraction of the national wealth to distribute to its personnel, create a job. So the education system is the same. It was created to teach the young, but really it's rather to create a business that provides wealth, control, power for teachers, unions, and schools. It compels its clientele to accept service with backing of police, trying to always expand its reach. And so that makes sense. So these institutions evolve into maintaining status and will push the goal aside if it means getting more power. And it also, school also, it wants you to link you that good grades equal good job. And to this, students and parents are easier to regulate and intimidate and go unchallenged, because this teacher has the authority to give your child an F. Well, now that's going to hurt their career. Really, it won't hurt their career at all, unless maybe, I don't know what career looks at grades, but this just gives the state more power. American Federation of Teachers states its one goal is to persuade businesses to hire and promote on the basis of school grades. So this just re-emphasizes the grades equal money, so bad grades, low money. And I saw this in my last episode, I talked about in the Rockefeller episode, that finance bankers, they would bribe colleges to teach the way that they wanted them to teach. Skull and Bones did this. The General Education Board did this. And so as earlier, math, reading, they take 100 hours to learn. So it can't be the goal. That can't be just the sole goal of schooling, because there is so much more time spent in school than the 100 hours that it would take a child to learn how to read or write, do math. So are we locking kids up for 12 years to get good grades to get rich? I wouldn't think so. So is the purpose socialization? Not really. You're with the same people in the same area, no difference, no variety, and you have a sole expert in the room that's going to tell you how to think and feel. And any child that stands up or doesn't want to be locked down is labeled ADD, persona non grata, low class material, and that must do wonders on kids' psyches and confidence. Discovering the meaning for yourself is education. Discovering purpose for yourself is what education should be. And I say this like my addiction years, and now, like, if I was using drugs because I was sad, and I was sad that I was using drugs, and I saw no purpose in my life. That's all I saw, was that heroin and drugs took the pain away for the next day, that I was going to feel like crap about myself. I had no purpose to live. I was a loser. I worked a shitty job, that you can call it. But that's what and I left high school, and it's not like I didn't have purpose. I was going to be a nurse, but I just did that because it was employable. I hate blood. I hate seeing people in pain. When Miss Allen shows me photos like of surgery things, I get sick. I hate it. Oh, it's horrible. But I did it because that's what I thought was the right move, right? As opposed to now, I mean, I love my job, but I think that's what education needs to be, because it takes 100 hours to read and write. These other times should have children be spent learning what they love, finding a passion, finding a purpose to be in this life, to be an adult, and something that they can survive on and enjoy and love to do. But that's not what they're doing at school. They're indoctrinating our kids so that they can control the next population easier. Institutions have a rule. If they stop growing, they die. So what does this do? So in a normal world, quality of competition of business is a good thing for customers. It keeps the institution or business on its toes, because they need to keep doing better than their competition. Well, this is not the same for schooling. There is no drive to better prepare children. So what is competed for in school by the students? It's the favor of a teacher, and a balance that can be won and lost by little things. Rewards are like a sticker or roaming the halls for an extra few minutes. Teachers compete for the favor of administrators, and so on. That machine gun goes. So it doesn't make any sense. There's no drive in school of competition to, have the most successful class, whatever that may be defined as, or to have kids that are whatever the goal is, that they find their purpose, they find something they love and they explore it. That's not the incentive in schooling. Because there's no incentive to have that happen. They're taught to deem a good school by their PSSAs in Pennsylvania and standardized tests. What does that show? It shows nothing. It does not show the health and the intellect of these kids. In school, parents are half lied to, half truths. Teachers usually consider the parents of the kid the adversary. Like the school system is so broken. Like that's the evil person, the parents trying to catch me teaching something I know I shouldn't teach or say. And employees, they have like incentives to lie, because while the penalties were low because the teachers union is so powerful, they can get away with pretty much anything, but the rewards for not getting caught are far away the risk. And this is a horrible example, but my mom, like I told you, such a lovely teacher. It almost made me tear up talking about how amazing she is. But PSSAs are the standardized tests in Pennsylvania. And in Pennsylvania, school gets more funding based on how well they do on the tests. I'm sure that's like that in most states. Well, there was many teachers that would cheat on the test and get the kids the right answers so they score higher and it looks better on them. And there's plenty of stories of teachers doing that. Why? Because then their school gets more money from the government. This whole system is broken. And think about like the amazing structures we built in the past. And I know like Tartaria is like a big thing, and I was on it for a while. And I don't know where I stand really. I'd like to think it's just human ingenuity. And I think regardless, that's what it is. But these projects will go on for decades, supposedly. So what kept the community working on something for decades? What, was it just fun, money? No, it was because these people were raised in a community by the community. They wanted what was best for their people. Could you imagine doing anything like that today with our community, with your community, my community? School has replaced that community, right? That working together for the better of us is gone. Evidence, go to North Philadelphia. People, when they made those beautiful stained glass windows, didn't even bother to sign it. They were priceless works of art because it was for the betterment of the community, for passion, love. And it's even suggested now that schooling should be longer to function better because we're not farmers anymore. They would have, they'd say medical and therapy and all this other stuff for kids. Why would they want that? Why would they want the kids to learn more? To learn how to read better? No, because that's clearly not been their goal then I say they again, I mean like people making decisions. No, because they want to create a synthetic family where you're loyal to the institute, and then when you graduate from that, you can be loyal to the state. That's what schooling does. It creates us loyal to the state of tyrannical actions, but you never question because you didn't question then. Schools are the cause of weak families and weak communities. And I don't know if I agree totally with that. I think degeneracy is probably the cause of weak families, but it'll teach the next kids to act the same. That's for sure. Schools reached their maximum efficiency long ago, meaning more school will just continue to make it worse. Yeah. So I talked about Bell's pleaded to use the right to use the toilet. You teach his kids to become liars for small rewards. And the schooling is all held together with this bizarre tapestry of carrot stick. And it's just so broken that like our education, you should come out there of school with a passion or a purpose, like I said, and I don't think that that's what it does. And if you felt that after school, congrats. Like I love my school, I have friends, all those things like that. But did it prepare? I don't remember learning anything. Honestly, literally don't. I didn't read any books. I didn't learn anything because I was taught by people who weren't passionate about what they were teaching. It was a job that they were going to have no matter what. And that's not, you remember those good teachers. We all do. And those are the people that if it was a free market education system, they would get the money because they loved what they did. And the kids knew they loved it. And you knew, and they loved it. The kids loved it. The parents loved it because those are the people that should be there. But our education system is filled with people that have no business teaching kids, that either hate it or barely educated themselves. They just went to college. What did they learn? What did they tell me what they learned in college? Oh, dude, it's just so frustrating. So frustrating. And this is only continuing. Like, the scientific school establishment continues to centralize national standards, national curriculum, standardized testing. We have left my boy AJ, Andrew Jackson's populism. We gave up that from saying, oh, that's elitist. We're not doing that. We know what's best for us. And we have now totally put everything in the hands of dear leaders, just like they teach you again in school. And this, in Massachusetts in the 1680, you have like certain type of Christians coming over from a certain area. They're living life very individualistic. Then you have another one from England that were more like a Saxon Celtic background, who shared their work in the community with farming and stuff. These two towns didn't like each other, and they would kick people out if they didn't want to agree with the homogeny of the group and the beliefs of the group. You're causing too many issues. You disagree. We don't want you in this community anymore. And they would kick you out, and they would go to the next town, and maybe they believed with their beliefs, right? This is what works, and it encourages everyone to better themselves. If you have a community that wants the best for its people, and this is manages them humanely. It's not like you're beating these people out. You're not, murdering them. They don't do you any good. You don't agree with them, so you leave. Now, as opposed to that, we force humans to accept everyone, no matter how hostile, no matter how polar the opposite, and creating fatal disagreements. We force people that have shared no like values to go to be in the same community, in the same group, in the same school, in the same area. And we see that today. Look how back in those days, if the divide we had was this great that we have now, we would break off and we would form our own community, just like they tried to do in the Civil War. And the North emigrated, brought in 15% more population to run the factories while they sent the North for war. But by living diametrically opposed to each other with different ideas, it would make the best idea win. So hopefully that's what happens here, but I don't see that happening. So eventually the best idea would come out on top, and that became the new way. And this is how America became the fearless American democracy, because you made everyone better or you got kicked out. It produced good, loyal communities, willing to fight for their communities, willing to innovate for their communities. And it was a paradise. But government monopoly schooling uses a totally different tactic than letting the best idea rise to the top to encourage uniqueness and all those things. It's even crazy too. Massachusetts in the 200 years ago was this super traditional conservative place. Like, they literally fought the state to trying to mandate schooling in their state. 80% of them did. And now it's one of the most liberal states of the union. And is that because they put legislation down to make them that? No, it's because after 200 years, because your kids grow up in the same area, you start to realize the errors of previous generations. And that's like the big thing. So this education system and everything is legislated down upon us. Like, again, how I said, like, from a group of experts. So they force things before a community believes in it, accepts that idea, because they either have an agenda that they need, or they want to create, agreements so they make it illegal. And this has never worked. Things like affirmative action, desegregation, women's rights, all these progressive victories that were unwilling to wait for the populace to believe them, because obviously it's a good idea that women have the right to vote. We're all equal. And like desegregation, obviously that was a good idea that was sped up, and it didn't work out. right? And then it creates resentment again and again. So what legislation that has changed the paradigm of our country ever been good? It's not. It's never good. Just like I don't think drugs are something you should take, but making drugs legal, it just created an institution. The people didn't want to accept that. Clearly, they still don't. And look how well the drug war has worked out for us. There's just countless examples. And like kind of I said earlier, do Black Americans now live better than they did before desegregation? No, they live way worse. The cities are horrible. So legislation does not do anything to better us by passing a rule. It does the opposite. It makes it worse. And I tweeted this. Mandatory schooling also has not created like any more money, any more inventions. The purchasing power in 1910 of one worker is the same of purchasing power of two workers in 2020. And now these two people don't even get to see their children. I mentioned and sort of teachers, they have the hundreds of agencies to maintain the institution of government monopoly schooling. It succeeds. Mandatory schooling would not succeed. You would not willingly send your kid there if it wasn't enforced by police that you must. If you had the option at like 15, you think your kid can read, he wants to go, he loves carpentry, you have, some options of like half schooling, but he still has to go or she still has to go. And so preventing a free market education, you have a handful of social engineers backed by industries that profit from schooling. Think of all the businesses that make money because of mandatory schooling. Teachers' colleges, textbook publishers, supplies, all these, they have now skin in the game to not let go of the stranglehold they have on a mandated thing. What else is mandated that they make money on? They're not required. They don't need to advertise. You have to get it, right? What else is that? So for 300 years, Americans were able to make their own choice, make their own mistakes, and everyone was better for it. America was the powerhouse. Now they order to change behavior, throw away community, abandon culture, accept the culture we're putting down your throat, and otherwise you're a bigot and we're going to ruin your life. And I said that schooling has created huge industries that profiteer off educating children. I'm sure they care. They're making that standardized test because they want the best for your kid. They're making this textbook because this is the most up-to-date information. Oh, well, yeah, not much change, but you got to spend another $300 on this book. Think of how much businesses are propped up by education system. And America has seen the results of this parasite schooling. Just waiting. America is waiting, me included. We all are just waiting for someone to tell us what to do. We don't know what to do because we've been indoctrinated to wait, to ask, to wait to be told the answer. Bridges collapse, bankers cheat, goodwill decays, government lies, corruption and shame everywhere. It's disgusting. And what do? We wait for someone else to tell us what to do. We just are a generation of followers. And that sounded a little too 3%er for me, but we're just like kind of accepting the status quo. And I always say this, the only thing we can do is try and leave the system as much as possible. We cannot give it attention. You cannot give it energy. Certifying experts with privileges of status unwarranted by the results they don't produce. We literally give these experts, they're wrong every time, and yet they still get the prestige, they still get the honor, they still get our attention, not ours, but society, when they've been wrong so many times. When does that ever happen in business? If I kept selling a bad product after telling them that I would do this and I did this, we would be out of business. But they're not. They'll make it illegal to question them. So what do we need to do again? We need to turn our back on national solutions. focus on families and communities. Find a place with a church, find a place with a group of like-minded people. And Twitter is one of those places. Like, I've met so many awesome people, and that is how we get it better. You meet these people, you befriend them. We need to create groups of people that are like-minded, that are powerful together, that you can rely on, and all those things. Refute the maxim, good fences make good neighbors. We need to become a part of our communities and teach that to our children, that this is their community. They want what's best for it. Everyone should be included in the child's education, the old, the young. I would give anything to go back to talk to my pop-pop now. Both of them. I only really met the one, but they were both in World War II. But, as a child, you're not taught any history. You don't understand anything. You need to be with the olds, the people that can mentor you and help you avoid pitfalls that you might have, that they fell through. But you don't do that. We lock them into a room with the same age kids to some certified teacher. And that's what we can do. The real solution lies on decertifying teachers, but that won't happen. There's too much money and control to gain from it. So don't be scared into surrendering your children to experts. So that's my episode today, guys. I hope you learned something about the modern education system and how broken it is. I love the book. I hope that the episode, good, Jeremy Crow. Go listen to Jeremy. I got to get you on the show again soon, Jeremy. But he homeschools his kids. That is so awesome. So I hope you guys learned something from the show. I thought it was really, a lot of these things I didn't think about schooling. And I went to high school. I was in my last semester of nursing school when I got kicked out because someone wrote like anonymous letters that I was selling and doing drugs. And my mom, I was taking classes for a while, and I stepped away from it because I just didn't see any in. I have a great job that doesn't need me to have a degree. And it's almost like in my mind, it's backwards. Like, I'm paying these people. There's like that Goodwill Hunting line. You spent all this money, what you could have gotten for $2.50 in late fees from the library. I love reading about history. I love reading about a lot of things. And I have learned more in these 2 years than any class has ever taught me, because I want to learn it. And I'm so passionate about it. And it's interesting. And I just love it. And to get at this piece of paper from a college that's corrupt and degenerate, promoting, brainwashing, manipulative. I was at Penn State, and they did if you use the wrong pronouns or whatever, that's not where I don't want to give them money. It's not going to benefit me. My backup is if my company failed tomorrow, my backup plan would do apprentice with somebody who works with their hands and do that, or farm or create more awesome videos, all these things. We don't have the energy anymore to give to these universities and colleges that are telling us to hate ourselves, that we're wrong, that this is the right way to think, by tenured teachers. So the schooling system is broken. I would love to homeschool my kids. So I have a few more homeschooling books that I got to read to Miss Liv Allen to try and convince her. But we need to take power back from the schools, take power with the community. And it's kind of my answer to every solution on every show, but meet good people, befriend these good people, associate with these people, and we still have the power. There's more of us than there are of them. We can take control back in this country with no violence, just with love, Christianity, being good neighbors, and that's it. So guys, follow me on Twitter at Conspiracy or JAC. If you want to support the show, conspiracy or just a coincidence.com. Next week, I got an awesome week. I got an anarcho-capitalist guy that I'm going to have on, and I'm going to enjoy that because I won't be a debate, but I am going to throw some tough questions. And I have somebody else the next day. I can't remember who. And also, I'm setting up a debate with Ken Ami and Gary Wayne on Giants. So that might be in November. So stay tuned for that. All right, I'm Jack Allen, everyone. Thanks for listening.